Chop, the original Guillotine League podcast. Everything you need to know to avoid the chopping block. Chop is brought to you by GuillotineLeagues.com.
What's up and welcome to Chop, a Guillotine League podcast. I'm your host, Corey Parson, the fantasy executive. Glad to be joining y'all on this beautiful day in the month of October as we get ready to go in to week 6 of the NFL season. Glad, as always, to be joined by my man, John Laghezza. John, my good brother, what's chopping?
Yo, man, when I saw that name on the docket, I couldn't get rid of the Cheshire Cat smile. Hanging with the exec on this beautiful day, man. I'm ready. You're the boss, man. Let's go.
All right, so let's get ready to get into it. And you know what? Let's get into what we are here for, to talk about the top 10 most chopped players of the week, and then give you some strategy of how to move going forward. Also coming up on the program, we'll look at some guys that's on the regular waiver wire that you can pick up to that could help your run to fantasy glory. Now let's get ready to hop right into it. The most chopped player of the week, chopped in 15% of leagues, is Las Vegas Raiders tight end Brock Bowers. I happen to have him on one of my guillotine teams, John. Last reports, he may be out until week 9, has a bye coming up in week 8. What do we think about Brock Bowers?
All right, Bowers definitely on the short list of players that could matter at the end, right? Paul and I talked about this last week, trying to aim your focus on the top-tier players that will actually make a difference when there's only a couple teams left and we're looking to bring home the trophy. That said, he's banged up. And that said, Corey, even as bad as he's looked with the bone bruise, which again is no joke, he still hasn't finished outside the top 2 tight ends, right? He hasn't been outside the top 24 finish. So I think this is one of the rare occasions where I am looking to acquire an injured player. I'm not going to go to the triple digits, though. You got to keep the bid low, because whoever bids on him and wins him may lose him, right? May fumble that ball again further on in the process. So I'm kind of going against my usual. I will bid for an injured Brock Bowers, but I want to keep it like the $30 range. I really want to keep it cheap. I kind of want to make it a steal, because again, trying to roster him is a bit of a challenge, especially if we're looking at 3 or 4 weeks. But if anybody's worth holding for 3 or 4 weeks, it's got to be this young man. He is incredible at the position.
Yeah, definitely, no doubt, a target monster. And so much goes into it when you talk about Bowers, as far as, when you look at the strategy of moving forward and trying to bring all the pieces together. We know what he can do. He has an excellent target share, fantastic tight end, top pedigree, definitely getting it done. So he's going to be a real interesting one to keep an eye on in your leagues this week. Player number 2 at 13.9% is Buffalo Bills running back James Cook. 0 touchdowns in week 5, but been a stud so far this season with 5 touchdowns early going on in the season. Now the offense generally runs through Josh Allen, but goal line carries, he's there. Pretty consistent type back when it comes to getting carries, getting touches. James Cook, the number 2 most chopped player running back for the Buffalo Bills.
Man, this is when guillotine leagues really come back and can give it the old Ric Flair thumb in the eye, because James Cook coming off 4 straight top 10 weekly performances, looking like a legit, not just like an RB1, looking at points like the RB1, one of the top 3, top 5 at the position, a guy that could definitely carry you to the finish line. But in this thing of ours with Chopped, you finish at the bottom, your head goes under the blade. This is another one of those guys, no question. You want to be aggressive for James Cook. Man, we may have to bug Paul on vacation off air to ask him where you go for these elite players. I don't want to say maximum, because I never think you want to spend $500, Corey. But I do think whatever your personal budget is, your max, that's where I want to go. I'm definitely over the 100 mark. I'm probably at like $150, depending how long I tinker with it. Maybe I'm up near 175. A guy like Cook, you mentioned, it's a great offense. He's got the pedigree. We're seeing him kind of grow into that role. Man, on a great offense that kind of lacks some explosivity outside of him. Hard not to like James Cook for almost all the ducats. And in particular, if you're a struggling team and you found yourself near the chopping block, maybe you're going past that 150, you're going to 200, 250, 300, because this is a piece in James Cook you really want to come down with.
Yeah, no doubt. I would agree with you on that, John, because what you're seeing is a player, like you mentioned, all of those things attached to that big-time offense, and that really makes a lot. The third most chopped player, very interesting guy, Detroit Lions wide receiver Jameson Williams, more commonly known as JMO. You know what I'm saying? 13.3% of chop leagues, JMO is eliminated. Only one target in the win this past week. It was obviously they were blowing them out. Lions ran the football a lot. Didn't really see a lot of targets go his way. He is fourth on the team in targets, right? But here's the problem. It's so much St. Brown. It's so much Gibbs. It's so many different weapons that they have. He kind of has that appeal, though. When he does go off, Jameson Williams, he really goes off. Like, it can be 3 catches for 125 and 2 touchdowns. He has that kind of explosive, big playability. The problem is, so does Gibbs. So does Amon-Ra St. Brown. So this is a real interesting one right here when you look at Jameson Williams, a guy that back in, August, draft season, a lot of people had high expectations for, but, he's on this list right now.
Yeah, listen, you start taking shots at JMO, it usually only ends up one of 2 ways. Either really, really good or really, really, really bad, right? Well, a lot of us have been there. Jameson Williams in particular, Corey, and I hate to knock these guys. He's a premier athlete. He is a phenomenal player, that could rip the topside off of just about any secondary in the game. That's it. You mentioned all the really good points when it comes to guillotine formats, and no victory laps here. But this is one of the reasons why I was off of a player like Williams in a format like guillotine, where it's all about floor and consistency. You mentioned the, big pop and big play, deep shot ability, which we love. That's not really conducive to guillotine formats. Jameson Williams, all right, that game where he goes 3 catches, $150 and 2 scores, first place doesn't really get you very far in this game. It's the other weeks that really concern me. I was just looking at it a second ago. All right, so Jameson has 1 wide receiver 1 finish. Week 2, he was the 12th wide receiver. After that, he has not finished, Corey, inside the top 57. That's exactly what's going to get you chopped. And for a guy with a legit, every down roll, Jameson is running 96% route participation. That's as high as she goes. He's only earning 4.2 targets a game. So the volume and the consistency just not there. Though, if you're desperate, he's the kind of guy that could take a bad team past the blade. I wouldn't rely on the consistency.
Yeah, that's the problem one right there. He can get you past the blade one week, and then the next week, he can be the reason why you are hitting the blade, while you're underneath the blade because of that donut or that 2.3 or whatever the case may be. That 23.5-point game, and you mentioned it perfectly, that really doesn't matter in this format. This is survive and advance, like the NCAA tournament. You know what I'm saying? So you go right there. So, JMO, let me ask you this, though. As far as when you're looking at adding players and stuff like that, what are you looking at positionally? Is it be solid at running back? Is it be solid at wide receiver? Do you want a top quarterback?
Well, luckily, the leagues I play in are 18-team. So luckily, when I went in, I was already knowing flex positions were going to be stressed. I was going to wait on quarterback. I was going to wait on tight end, try and figure that stuff out, and then dig into the player pool as they became available. Luckily, that ended up being a winning strategy. For now, I think the most important thing is probably finding running backs with a floor. I got one guillotine league where, man, we're 5 weeks in, and I still can't make an ad, and it's not even like I've lost, because I believe that the teams that had the winning, thesis coming in to get those flex players are the teams still in it, and that's why those running backs have been available. So I think it really is just about creating that base. There's more wide receivers available than any other position. And again, tight end and quarterbacks, you can only have one. Most people only roster one. So again, that supply is a little bit high. So I think really the crux, the focus is filling in that RB spot. Because if you're taking zeros where other players are getting touchdowns, again, good way to find yourself under the blade.
All right, there you go right there. Now, when we get to our next player on the chopping block, it is Tampa Bay Buccaneer running back Bucky Irvin at 12.4%. Shoulder and foot injuries, kind of banged up right now. Saying about 2 weeks, but you know how that goes when it comes to coach speak and injury talk and stuff like that. You're sitting on the edge of your seat every single Sunday morning. What do you think about Bucky Irvin at 12.4% chop rate?
Man, audible sigh. One of my most rostered players this season. We were riding high. Bucky looks fantastic. He's pound for pound. He's one of the best tailbacks in the game, versatility tied to the good offense and the good quarterback with continuity. It was like wheels up for a tremendous Bucky Irving season. Unfortunately for me, I backed him up everywhere with Sean Tucker, thinking maybe our boy Rachaad White might have been a little dusty. Turns out, even if he is a little dusty, he can still get into the end zone twice in a weekend. As far as Bucky Irving goes, I think you need more information. Back to what I mentioned about Bowers, I think a lot of it kind of copy and paste. Type of player that could win you a league. We have uncertainty plus time when it comes to injuries. We don't know if those details will change. Corey, you mentioned the injuries and the code speak, which, again, one of the reasons you're so sharp, and if I've been following you for so long, you cut through a lot of that fog. Remember, it was a foot injury. Now he's listed with a shoulder. When did that happen? And you got to hate finding out about this stuff late. So again, I don't think we know all the details. 2 injuries are worse than 1. I think you've got to let someone else take the stab at Bucky, unless you can if you can get him for $25, $30, then I think he's worth the stash, again, on that short list of players worth holding on to. But as good as he is, I got to worry more about surviving than even a player we might be waiting 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, I definitely get what you're saying on that one right there. The next guy is another tight end, and we're looking at Zach Ertz here, 12.4% of leagues chopped in. His last 3 performances, John, 38 yards, 21 yards, and 0 yards. This is Zach Ertz that we are discussing. Better days, glory days of Zach Ertz probably behind him. I mean, at this point, are we even really considering him in guillotine leagues?
No, I think at this point in the season, I think it's over. And I think you actually bringing up a very good point when it comes to this type of play. As the season progresses, there are certain players that find themselves in like the non-viable category. I'd rather take a stab, Corey, on literally take a stab at any of the youth movement going on at the tight end position. Give me, and I'm a Jets fan, but give me Mason Taylor soaking up some of those targets in New York. You could give me A.J. Barner, looking like a real stud out there. You know, he's kind of doing it a little bit differently. A lot of these young tight ends, something I hear you talk about a lot, the athleticism that it takes to succeed. Barner doing it a little bit differently. He's out there, but he is straight up bullying guys. And then he does it up the catch, where a lot of these guys are kind of athlete first, and then blocker second. Barner, and I think that fits in really well in that Kubiak system in Seattle. Bully first, catch the ball second. Darnold is proven to maybe be a bit serviceable, maybe more so than we thought. Yeah, I would take any of the young guys more than Ertz. I'm not really interested. I think the Commanders will get a boost with our guy Jaden Daniels back. I know you love him as well. He's a boss. But at the same time, how far is Ertz going to go? He can't do anything with the ball. Right, it's catch and fall down. It's almost tight end touchdown dependent. Excuse me. So yeah, I'd rather go with the targets in the youth.
And what's so interesting about where we are at now in the season, like, you know, we're into October. So everything you thought in July, everything you kind of was sure about in August, and the things you thought would change in September, now that we're into October, it is what it is. And it's time to forget about everything that happened in the past and move forward with what's going on in the future. So it's no time to think, oh, well, this guy's going to turn it around and this is going to happen. No, it's time to go with the data and the numbers that we have. And that definitely leads to Zach Ertz as a guy that I would probably say you don't really want to waste any time on. But what you do want to waste some time on is this upcoming What You Bidding section presented by Pristine Auction. All right, so, John, what's chopping? Let's just say we have $870 left, right?
All right, good amount.
All right, I want to name some players, and you give me, you know, what you would consider. Maybe you want to go by a percentage. Maybe you want to go by a dollar amount. What you would consider bidding on some of these names that we talked about earlier. Let's start with Jameson Williams. Talked about him in depth, the Detroit Lion wide receiver. What would you look to bid on JMO?
Yeah, I think you really got to keep it low. But everything is league dependent and team dependent. If you need more than one wide receiver piece, then make sure that you're putting in competitive bids. Though I think everything for a guy that isn't a keeper at this point should really be 40 and below, 50 and below. Like you mentioned before, you want to get to the end with that cash. And it's not to say you're looking to squeak by, but unless a player is somebody that you really feel confident that, Paul was talking about this last week. He's already thinking about the end game. Is a player that I add in week 6 going to be part of this roster in week 15? We mentioned Will Williams. I don't think so. So I think, again, it's the low twos, right? It's the 20s, it's the 30s for a guy like Williams. Try and steal him in a league where maybe there's other options available.
Definitely matchup dependent when you look at JMO. Bijan Robinson on the other side of the ledger, not matchup dependent. You know what I'm saying? 870 is the max. What are you looking at Bijan?
All of the money, right? All the money and half the money I don't have. All my money and half of yours. Whatever isn't nailed down is what you want to give up for Bijan. You always want to make sure whether or not leagues have $0 ads. I think that's like a universal good piece of advice. Make sure that you're saving yourself enough to add into the future. But a guy like Bijan, you got to go get him. Now, before I even put a number, because that number is in the hundreds. It's 200, it's 250, it's 300. I think one more good piece of advice is maybe go back on your league's bid history this season and see if you can get a feel for it. Because I've been in leagues, Corey, where there are multiple bids in a single week for 700, 800. If that's the case, that's where you got to go all the way for the moon. There are other leagues where the max bid may have been 275 for the entire season, where you still might want to go to 305. I'm not saying shortchange is the max, but you may not need to go to 725 or 525, numbers that I'm not really comfortable going for a single player. But again, if there's one player that could get you beyond the blade all by himself, tying in what I mentioned about running backs and how important it is to have that baseline work there, Bijan's everything. I mean, there's, 2 or 3 guys on the planet you'd rather have than Bijan right now.
Yeah, he's definitely getting it done. The talent and the production is starting to match up for Bijan Robinson. So shout out to him. Let's go to Las Vegas Raiders tight end Brock Bowers. Opened up the program talking about Bowers. Chopped in 15.4% of leagues this week. Listen, maybe out until week 9, has the bye in week 8, but Brock Bowers, what you bidding?
Yeah, like I said before, I'm going to keep it low. And I think probably the macro advice here is set your steal advice, right? Your stash and steal bid. Whether it's $15 or $12 or $25, it should be low, right? I think it should be 35 or below for a player that you're not starting. But maybe go through all your player pools. Look for those players that, again, Bowers is a championship winning type player. Identify those guys and see if you could find room to stash them. Because right now I'm stashing guys like Manungai, guys that could be okay, but right now we're not really worth anything. A guy like Bowers has true potential value. He's a set it and forget it. If they get that bone bruise right, you mentioned all the positive points for him. The bull case for Bowers, very easy to see if he's healthy.
All right, next up is running back Woody Marks. Very interesting name so far this year.
Man, I got whipsawed. I don't know if we have any trading people out there. Whipsawed, Corey, right? When you're buying and the price goes down, you start selling, the price turns around and goes up. They call that a whipsaw, right? We don't know which way to turn. I just did that. I got okey-doked. I was bullish on Chubb in the rough matchup 2 weeks ago. That didn't pan out. It looked very much like we had to flip it in. Marks looked fantastic. So it wasn't just like a utilization thing. Woody came out and he looked great in that game. And then, kind of womp, Chubb back out there. And I've always liked Nick Chubb a lot. I think he's a little bit limited for fantasy purposes because of, again, the limitations in the pass game. But all we can go by is the data we're given. That was Tennessee that game. And then it was Baltimore last time around. I don't know what to make of it. I got to be honest. I'm going to let someone else take Marks. I don't think that he should be left without a bid, but I think he should be at the very bottom with a number that you almost don't want to spend. We're talking 20, we're talking 15, 10 or less. Because, Corey, do we even know if he's going to get the goal-to-go touches? I think he's probably a safe bet for the passing game work, but I don't know what that's worth. He didn't catch a single ball in the last game. Of course, it was a rout. But I don't think anybody knows with certainty how that Texans backfield workload is going to shake out. And unless we know we're getting base work that I mentioned before, I wouldn't be too aggressive. And I like Woody for the moment. I really do. I think he's a good player.
I like him too and I agree with you on that. But unless they are going up against the Baltimore Ravens, really don't know how much offense they're going to be able to put up anyway. So definitely a lower bid on that one right there. All right, check out our friends at Pristine Auction. Something for every fan. Already registered with Pristine? Use code FANTASYLIFE when you win an item to receive $25 off at checkout. First-time users can register using code FL20. Once again, first-time users can register using code FL20 to get $20 in credit added to your account. Once again, what you're bidding brought to you by Pristine Auction. All right, John Laghezza back up on the screen. Let's get ready to hop into the rest of the players that we are going to be discussing. Some of the players may be disgusting, but we will be discussing. All right. Jacobi Meyers, 12.1% chop rate this year. He has been in the end zone the same amount of times as you and me this year, John.
Yeah, which last I counted was 0. Even though I'll tell you, I got a mean touchdown dance in my back pocket if I ever land one of those fat guy touchdowns. Right. If I ever land one of those thick sixes that we always are cheering on. Man, the thing with Meyers is this is rough. In particular, Jacoby's rough for the spreadsheet honks like me. You know, we're always digging into the advanced stuff, the underpinning stuff. And Meyers, you know, it should be a lot stronger than it is. I hate to point the finger of blame at my guy Gino right now, but this feels like a Gino problem. And I think that's where the answer to this question is. Jacobi Meyers, 98% route participation. He's averaging 7.8 targets a game. 25% of the team targets, 29% of the team's air yards, with 5 deep targets also. So, like, he's being used with a couple slot targets a game, 4.5 slot targets every single game, which is quite literally, Corey, exactly the type of usage we're looking for. Not to equate Jacobi Meyers with, you know, peak CeeDee Lamb, but that's what we want to see. We want to see the alpha wideout get moved from the Z to the X to the slot, because that will help us rack up some of those PPR scam points, depending on the coverage, and maybe make those players a little bit matchup-proof, build in a little bit of a fantasy floor. But we haven't gotten any of that. Touchdowns matter. You mentioned it, haven't done it yet. Jacobi Meyers has one top 15 finish. He was the wide receiver 15. He's got one more as the wide receiver 33. All the other ones are outside of the 40. And in fact, it's gotten worse every week. 15, 33, 40, 54, and 46. At this pace, Meyers is hurting us worse than not. I think you still have to bid on him. Again, the spreadsheet nerd in me says that many routes, that many targets. And I still think Gino is a good quarterback. Corey, we've never seen him put the ball in harm's way the way he is right now. I was one of the Gino stands saying this guy's hashtag good at football. I thought the contract was warranted. It killed me to see when the Jets parted ways with him. But right now it's really ugly. I don't think you can rely on Meyers, but I still think he's a floor payer for a Guillotine. So I think you get him up to the 50. Maybe people are cold on him and you get him for 40 or 50 bucks. I don't think I'm going to 100 because I want the scoring. Las Vegas hasn't really done that. That offensive line is really rough. Their offensive line is in shambles without Big Colton out there. So, yeah, Meyers is a Guillotine relevant, viable piece. But I don't think you should put your neck out for him.
Yeah, no, and that was a very good pun used by Sean right there.
Look at
that. Not put your neck out for him. That same neck, will you use it on Rome Odunze?
Oh, that's a totally different story altogether. Man, it might be the first piece I wrote this offseason for Mr. Berry and the Fantasy Life newsletter. If anybody wants to check it out, it's called Anatomy of a Sleeper. And we just started whittling down last year's statistics, like players that hit these certain benchmarks, usage and route run and target rates. And man, Odunze was really popping, again, with those underpinning metrics. And then this year, I think we've seen that kind of come to fruition. Rome Odunze has pretty much jumped DJ Moore as the wide receiver one. I mean, over 8, nearly 9 targets a game. He is just lighting up the board. 25% target per route run, more than 2 yards per route, more than 100 air yards per game, 40% of the team air yards. These are not just like sexy utilization numbers. Corey, we're bordering on the higher end wide receiver 1 numbers. Yeah, we're still short of a Puka, JSN, A1. But right after that is kind of Rome Odunze. And if we're looking at a post-bye week bump from the Bears, Odunze is a piece. If you think you can wrestle him away from a team that is struggling, that's a guy you want. And another guy, I'm at that 150 mark, maybe that 200 mark again, short of Bijan, but higher than anyone else we spoke of. Rome Odunze, every week player. He could dominate. I mean, if you told me he was going to be a top 8 wideout after the bye week rest of the way, I'd believe you.
Player number 8, we've already discussed it in your What You Bidding segment. That is Bijan Robinson. I mean, you really don't have to go through it right now at 12% in chop leagues, 12% chop rate this week, excuse me. Bijan Robinson, I mean, you paper bag, brown paper bag. You know what I'm saying? Go underneath the bed, get the brown paper bag, and say, I got a chance to put Bijan on the team. Let's rock and roll from here.
Yep. Man, you know what I didn't realize? He was on the bye, and you don't realize how dangerous those bye weeks can be. Mental note to myself, maybe do a better job. I'm not doing a great job. I like to admit, when I like to take my L's, right, that L for love. I think I have to do a better job of keeping an eye on the bye weeks, because if you're in a league where supplies are low, that should and could affect, right, those bid amounts. A guy like Bijan probably sunk a bunch of teams, and it's not your fault for drafting Bijan, but if you didn't have a good plan, that may have been. Right, a lot of Bijan managers may have went home with $600, $700, $800 in their pocket.
Yeah, that's tough right there. Definitely plays into the strategy when you look at especially some of these early bye weeks, early on in the season. But then again, injuries can cancel that out and stuff like that. So you never really know. Up next is Carolina Panther running back Chuba Hubbard at 12%. Rico Dowdle pulling his show, an absolute show versus the Miami Dolphins rush defense. Now he gets the Dallas would have had the Dallas Cowboys. Well, Rico has the Dallas Cowboys defense cut coming up. Hubbard, though, 12% chop rate right now. When we think of Hubbard, is it Rico Dowdle's show moving forward? Is it more of a split moving forward? Or it's just, okay, this was a matter of you were playing against one of the poorer rush defenses, maybe in NFL history?
I'm actually really glad you tacked that caveat at the end, because I was going to say not one of the worst like this season. This is one of the worst tackling and run stopping units we've seen in quite a long time. So you made all the pertinent points, Mr. Executive. I think we're going to end up seeing a split. I don't think you should not bid on Dowdle. Like, I think he's a viable piece, but I think we're going to get one more start at least that you want a piece of. But I'd be very careful. That Miami defense, it's really hard to understate. Their bottom 3, I won't give you all the numbers, I'm bored to death. Bottom 3, rush EPA, defensive rush success, yards per rush, yards before contact per rush, yards after contact per rush, deep rushes, right, 20-yard rushes, explosive rush rate, and running touchdowns. So who's to say Chuba wouldn't have gotten his first 20-yard run last weekend? Dowdle racked off 3 of those. So now the efficiency stuff, when you compare them head-to-head, is going to be lopsided. And I think we're going to have at least a couple of younger analysts out there calling for the Rico Dowdle takeover when Hubbard is back. I don't think that'll be the case. I also think we have to worry about the just general contextual environment in Carolina. It's not very good, right? They're not going to score a lot of points very often. I don't like to trash Bryce Young. I think people were unfair to him. We saw some growth at the end of the year. I was hoping we'd see a little more kind of continuation. He struggled. We've seen the good. We've seen the bad. You take them both, there you have, right, the fact that Bryce Young in your life. So I think you got to pump the brakes. I would bid on Dowdle. But I think someone that needs him is going to go into the hundreds for him. I'm not there. I'm at like a 30-40 because his value is very high and it's going to continue to drop. Though, if we see Hubbard go down again, you could push in all the chips on Dowdle, right? Because he's going to get all the workload. But until then, I'm probably going to let someone else go nuts for him.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that one right there. This was really a spot of matchup meeting an opportunity, and Dowdle was definitely able to take very good advantage of it in this situation right here. And as far as Bryce Young goes, listen, I was a big supporter of the kid, and I wanted to see him do well this year. I was very high on him coming into the season. Truth of the matter is this. There's one route that he can throw and hit consistently. He looks like an amateur player playing with professionals. I just got to be honest about what I'm seeing from my boy Bryce Young right now. All right, player number 10 is Travion Henderson, New England Patriots running back, chopped in 11.9% of leagues. Real big expectations for Henderson coming into the season. So far, mixed bag of results. Right now, for our purposes, player number 10 on the chop list, Travion Henderson.
I mean, we can't be more than 2 or 3 more Mondre fumbles right from getting this guy the ball, man, right? I'm one of the people that I stepped on the rake later on. I'm not going to point any fingers. and any analyst that convinced me, right? We're all adults here when we push our own draft buttons. But yeah, I thought for a team we had high expectations for a offensive thrust from, right, an ascendant offense in the Patriots. They looked a little disappointing up front. They're really starting to pick it up. May is showing some of that, moxie and the gusto to win big games that we're hoping for from a young star player filling in that role. That said, that's a lot of narrative stuff. If there's any hope for Henderson, it would probably be the Gibson injury. So not to say if he gets it, those managers got bailed out, but if he gets the work, those managers probably got bailed out because it did not look like Henderson was going to get that opportunity anytime soon. Just 3.8 yards per attempt, less than 2.5 yards after contact per attempt. The success rate is not good, and he's only faced an 8-man box in 1/3 of those carries. He's shown a little bit of chops in the passing game, and I think that's maybe where we can expect to have the floor built in. So if Guillotine is a floor game with a player that could grow into a role with the talent, like you mentioned, in an ascendant offense like I mentioned, I think I view Henderson a little more valuable in Guillotine formats, especially maybe even on teams that I'm not planning on starting him right away. So I'm going to go not as high as the Bijan, right? Not at all. If Bijan is 250, 200, maybe Travion is the 75 to 100. I've tried to do a good job of slotting guys where I rank them as far as that amount goes. But I think you want Travion. It may not happen this week, and it may not happen next, but I do think we'll see the flipping eventually. Though, hat tip to Ramondre, who just keeps chugging along, no matter how much social media has been burying this guy. He keeps producing, and he's even shown some explosivity in the pass game as well. So it's probably a split share for now. But without Gibson in the way, I think Travion is a floor in the PPR game. So, yeah, I think he's got some value, man.
All right, let's look at some of the other players coming in with double-digit percentage and double-digit chop rate. Pittsburgh Steelers wide receiver DK Metcalf, interesting. I mean, he is the guy in the passing game, but if Pittsburgh is playing football the way Pittsburgh wants to play football, they really don't look to be passing the ball that much.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it. He's a perfect example of where target share and volume don't always meet up, right? You can have 100% of the pie with 5 targets, only 5 targets. You'd rather have 1% of 10,000. You know what I mean? So percentages can be a little bit misleading. They did hit the deep shot. Rodgers had looked a little bit more competent with the play action game, kind of going to what you're talking about. The stylistic for Pittsburgh, I don't think led themselves to Guillotine. I've not been a Pittsburgh guy. They don't run enough plays. They're a little too run heavy. It's all really too slow for me. So Metcalf, again, I wouldn't let him just wither away on the waiver. He's probably better than a lot of wideouts. But to me, he's one of those guys that in a couple weeks we're not going to be interested in at all. You're under $50 in a bid. I'm probably 20 or under. Maybe I steal him. But I was mentioning to you off air, I found myself with a lot of players, on the cusp of viability. And I'd rather have any of take your pick wide receiver threes, Devonta Smith and Addison and those guys more than Metcalf because I don't like the volume. So I'm probably off the Steelers in general right now.
We discussed Woody Marks. Nothing really much to discuss with Josh Jacobs. What about Atlanta Falcon wide receiver Drake London also coming in at 11%?
Man, what's going to happen coming out of the bye? I'll be honest. It's funny. I was mentioning that versatile kind of use package, right? That we want to see. London was the player I was unable to draw from when I mentioned CeeDee Lamb. London, one of those guys that we've seen play in the X, move into the slot, be able to win pretty much at any level. He's a matchup win for the offense against any player on the field. Get him in a true, matchup disparity, and he could win you games. That's what I thought we were going to see. It really hasn't been. It just hasn't been the case so far. And I'm worried that targets are there. So I think the use case is probably okay. A guy like London, I think you're going to have to go to 100 FAAB to get him. I'm just a little bit worried. I thought Penix was going to be a little bit more efficient, maybe. And I don't know, the air yards per target is pretty low. Like the yards per route is there, but we just haven't seen it. And London also hasn't really been used in the red zone. So maybe that's a great case for the spreadsheet honks. Well, he's going to correct, right? We're going to see that positive regression. Right now, I'm afraid other people are going to overspend for a guy that was a first-round pick. I'm going to go to $100, Corey, but I'm going to be honest. He's not on the top of my fab list. I'm not going to be killing myself if I don't get him. But my worry is, like Bauer, when Bauer was playing, my fear is you're going to have a player that you feel like you have to roll out, A.J. Brown also, that is kind of hurting you more than you're helping you. And it becomes very difficult to bench these guys because, again, he's super talented. Drake London had a one top 5 finish, but after that, wide receiver 64, wide receiver 38. That'll hurt you, man. So I think you bid on London, get to $100, but I'm not going crazy to 300-400. I'm not interested like that.
Couple more names I want to run by you. Let's start with Niner wide receiver Ricky Pearsall.
I love Ricky Pearsall. I'm a little worried about the injury stuff. It might have been for the quick turnaround on Thursday. I'm hoping other people will share my worry. Now, you have to put him behind London. So if I have London at 100, I've got Pearsall at 75, and then if it's a 150, it's 125. I want to trail because I don't think the injury is that serious because I believe they said he might have been able to play if it was a Sunday game. Seeing what Bourne did in that offense really, really killed me as a Pearsall drafter because, we thought that would have been our workload. That whatever, 7 or 10 targets and all the catches over 100 yards. So I think Pearsall's a great play if he's available. Go after him. Yeah, to me, he's like that next tier. I don't like to go into the triple digits for everybody because we've got to save the cash. But I think if you're at 75 to 50 and you get a guy like Pearsall, you're going to be happy the rest of the season. That Shanahan offense, I think, is proven to make a winner out of almost anybody.
Yeah, definitely one of the more fantasy-friendly offenses in the NFL when it's rocking and rolling and going in the right direction. So shout out to him from fantasy owners all over the place. All right, coming in at just over 10% is Baltimore Raven quarterback, him of the hurt hamstring right now. QB1, as I like to call him, Lamar Jackson at 10.6%.
Yeah, Lamar might be the first player I can remember whose MVP case is being strengthened every minute he's off the field. It's like, this is a team that looks like a 3-win team without him, and they're still like a 15 team with him. It's really incredible. There is nothing like Lamar Jackson. He is incredible. I love me some Josh Allen also, but I've not even been that person putting him in the same conversation. Lamar. So as far as the guillotine stuff goes, I think it's a copy and paste for Brock Bowers in that, right? Tough onesie position. You still got a little bit of time to hold, so you shouldn't go nuts because this player might be available again. Whatever you decide to bet for Bauer that you could stash, add $1 more, put Lamar above Bowers because you can only stash one player. I don't recommend stashing more than one injured player. I think having one roster spot to have a cheap player that you think could win you a league, I think is actually a really good idea. I'll be interested to see what people bid. I don't think you should be going again more than 25, more than 30 for a player that can't help you immediately because if somebody misplays Lamar, bids 110, he could be the reason they lose and you'll just get another crack at him next week. They also have the bye coming up. Corey, I don't know if you think he's going to play. I don't want to question this guy's toughness. I think if Lamar is missing games, he's legitimately hurt. I never liked the idea of, well, maybe we'll force him out there to get a win that we need. I'd much rather see him sit through the bye. I guess, I don't know, is he worth more if you think he'll play this weekend? The answer should be yes, but I worry about re-injury. I think I would let other people take that extra risk.
Yeah, definitely do believe and agree with you that he will likely sit through the bye. And it is a risk that you're taking despite, the player, who has won multiple MVPs. All right, if you call yourself a sports fan, you got to have Xfinity. All the games, all in one place, including Sports Zone brings you every football game and over 1,000 college games, highlights, and alerts all in one place. If you like to scout multiple games, check out Multiview, which allows you to be in 4 stadiums at one time. Xfinity FanView has your live scores, odds, and stats all in one place, personalized to you and your teams. Xfinity Enhanced 4K, simply stunning. The voice remote, just say football. Imagine all your football all in one place. Learn more at Xfinity.com. Restrictions apply. New residential customers only. Taxes and extra fees are subject to change. John, my man, my good friend, Mr. John Laghezza. You know who I was surprised not to see on this list? Chase Brown. He's the 53rd most chopped player, but I mean, like, what's going on? It's not the guy that we saw being who we expected when we were drafting him on the 1-2 turn.
Yeah, well, that part is for sure. No arguing the failure to meet expectations. However, I don't know if people have had their eyes on the news wire, but I think Chase Brown is back on the menu. Our boy, my friend and yours, old man, long in the tooth, Joe Flacco, signed with the Bengals. So automatically they're viable again, right? We saw what he did to the Browns midstream. We saw what he did to the Colts midstream, and it may not be pretty at points, but the old man knows how to signal call, right? The Browning experiment was just not working. He didn't look good at the line, and to tie in the Brown stuff, I think that inability to challenge vertically was bringing up not just extra defenders, but a lot of these coaches are really sharp, and they know that if you throw designed packs and disguised blitz packages at these young QBs, you could get them off platform and get them out of their shoes a little bit. We're seeing a lot of that this year. A linebacker will be on 2 feet, like almost in a half 1 point, fake the rush, and then drop back, and you can see the quarterbacks are all like inside themselves. So I think with Flacco back, I think Brown is viable, and there's just too much work to not bid on this guy. I know the point was him not being that available. If he is, I think he's back as like a back-end RB2 immediately, maybe a mid-end RB2, and I think he may be a decent trade target. You know, people still may see the low yards per attempt and the lack of efficiency and think, all right, maybe he's just not explosive. But if you think Flacco affects the ecosystem, maybe that gives Brown the boost, and maybe we won't see him on any of these chop lists because he's going to be good again. I don't know. We'll see. You can't drop him, and you probably want him because those running back carries are very valuable.
No doubt. Let's talk about, obviously, we got to make some room to get these players into our rosters. Our man, Jeff Ulrich, has a very good column up at the Fantasy Life newsletter right now, the drops column. And he opens up with Jerry Jeudy, supreme talent, but just hasn't really been able to get an opportunity to put it all together and be the wide receiver and get attached to the offense like we thought he would. Dylan Gabriel, quarterbacking out there now. Jerry Jeudy, what do you think about Jerry Jeudy moving forward?
It's been disappointing. A lot of us hoped he was going to maybe take off or continue to elevate within this pass game. Now it looks like that was a Jameis Winston, effect. I don't think you could drop him, to your question in the direct, point here. There's just too much use. Judy's an every down player and averaging 7 targets per game. Maybe the move to Gabriel will help boost that conversion rate. I'm not sure if there is another player in the league averaging more than 7 targets with fewer receptions or receiving yards per game. That's 3 catches for 39.4. So if you don't want to start Jeudy, I get it. If you're in an 18-team Guillotine League, you probably still have to start him in the flex, maybe not. But I wouldn't drop him. I think a guy like him you bench because of the change to Gabriel. You'd hate to rage drop a guy, Corey, to find out that Gabriel is going to, grow into this offense with Jeudy as the number 1 target. You'd hate to have, held on for the bad and then miss out on the good. So I get if you don't want to start him, but I think Jeudy is still a viable player.
What about Marvin Mims?
No, I think Mims may be a little bit different here. Again, I fell for it. I fell for it. People, we got to be careful with this preseason stuff. He was running with the ones, and he 100% route participation with Bo Nix. And it was, well, what if Marvin Mims, who was super efficient, just gets more run? Well, womp, 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 hashtag sad trombone sound. Mims is only playing 42% of snaps. And though he does have a good target per route when he's out there, he does get looks. We're not getting enough of the 2-man stuff. They don't run enough of the 3-man plays in general. Again, we mentioned Jameson. Marvin Mims is like a Temu version of Jameson. If we're not interested in Jameson, we definitely don't want Mims. And he's a good example of a player, Corey, where I think we've hit that point in the season where He's out. And we're not going to hit a point where he's back in.
Marvin Mims, a Delancey Street version of Jameson Williams.
Extra stripe on the Adidas. Wait, that Adidas got 4 stripes, man.
The guy on the polo horse got a baseball bat.
Yeah, right. You know, if you know, you know. Listen, I may or may not have bought a girlfriend a gift on Fulton before.
Yeah, so there you go right there. Congratulations. All right, let's get back to it. Ollie Gordon still has some handcuff value, right?
Oh, 100%. The way the Miami Dolphins, listen, our boy Capri Shorts or not, Mike McDaniel finally showing some life again with the offensive scheme. Again, I was one of the people just starting to throw a little dirt on it. I thought maybe he got figured out. It seemed like it was as simple as just put hands on his receivers at the line, Corey, and if you were able to disallow that space for being created from Tariq and Waddle, then that would be the answer to solving the Dolphins. McDaniel's done a little bit of switching. They're having that motion stuff work. And Tua is super efficient. So as long as that offense is working, they're going to run a lot of plays. A lot of it is close to the line. Something would have to happen to A-Chain to make Gordon a starter. But Gordon's a perfect example of a player you'd much rather be 2 or 3 weeks early than 1 day late. Because if something were to happen to my guy A-Chain, I hate putting that negative stuff in the universe, man. I want all these guys to finish healthy. Gordon would be like a potential, maybe immediate RB2. I don't want to say RB1. Probably mid-range RB2. Maybe even front end if he's catching the rock and getting all the TD equity, which he's shown some confidence by the goal line. So, yeah, I would love Ollie Gordon. He's a guy that I think you're keeping the bids low. If someone does drop him, I like him better than Monungai. I probably like him better than a few running backs, backups on the Jets, maybe any backup on Dallas or the Giants. So, you want to rank these guys. If, other man's trash might be our treasure.
There you go right there. What about Elik Ayamaner?
Oh, Ayamanor. Man, I think...
Ayamanor, excuse me.
Yeah, I think if Ridley is going to start to come on, man, I wish we had more time because I'd love to pick your brain on the Ward stuff. You're always one of the guys I turn to with this young QB development. I think you have a good feel on the play, but also on the men, the players themselves. Again, I like Cam Ward, and I don't think trying to draw his career arc off what we've seen in 5 games is enough. I don't think that's fair. I think he will be better, but it's been pretty gross so far. I think you got to move on from the Titans until they show us something.
Yeah, would agree with you 100% on that one right there. Well, John, it has definitely been a ton of fun on this edition of Chop, a Guillotine League podcast. We got you your top 10 Chop players of the week, and we also let you know what you should bid on them. Want to give a big shout out to Xfinity and Pristine Auction for bringing us the program this week. For my main man, John Laghezza, is Corey Parson, the fantasy executive. Until next time, don't get chopped.